Hey there, just all the time. Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny and
Kenny Squared.
with us sports on the Positive Tip podcast. Kenny out there in the scorching Midwest. How's things going, man?
Man, it was hot yesterday. I stayed most of the day in AC,
Yeah.
which is not usual because I'm doing a baseball center for our summer program, but
Oh,
heat index of 107 yesterday. So
my gosh.
so stay
Yeah.
cool out there.
Yeah. It was. It hasn't been nearly that. I think tomorrow's supposed to hit 90, but it probably won't out here on Long Island. But it was very, very pleasant these last few days here. High 70s, low 80s, no humidity, nice, as the older folks would say, nice breeze. Going. So, that's a nice breeze. Hey, so let's jump right in. I really want to start there in Cleveland. And you and I have gone back and forth a couple of times this week, looked at some articles. I read something else last night as well. The Deshaun Watson, saga is too small of a word. This is becoming really crazy, and really going to have such a direct impact on the Browns out there, I think. And I love that you sent me an article and you said that the lady was sort of like, you compared her to Sweeney Murdy, who's phenomenal covering the Yankees, and she covers the Browns that way and kind of knows all things Browns. And her take, if I got it right, was that she felt like the Browns are all in. That ESPN article, and then there was another one that I read that compared this to Trevor Bauer, that Roger Goodell is going to be backed into a corner here, and there's going to be kind of a point of no return where we probably won't see him for quite some time on a football field. So why don't you update us on what's the feeling and status out there? And, you still have this really good quarterback, Baker Mayfield, who's kind of, in oblivion right now, right? Who knows? But why don't you update us and tell us your take also on what's going on here? And it's been a crazy week. He's got, he's to just keep quiet, unfortunately, because that also played into these stories that have come up. Okay.
Yeah, well, I guess I could start with Baker Mayfield. I heard a take that was kind of interesting yesterday. Because there's kind of been the talks of him possibly going places. Apparently, one of the places that's starting to ramp up is him going to Carolina, which would actually be a pretty good fit for him.
Yeah.
Not as much pressure there. Sam Darnold hasn't really worked out necessarily. Obviously, the Cam Newton experiment was kind of fun, but what was interesting is someone had said maybe like the Browns are kind of like waiting to see what happens with Deshaun Watson, because one of the biggest hangups apparently is all about the money. The Browns don't want to pay any of Baker Mayfield's salary, which is probably mainly because they're only paying Deshaun Watson $1 million. So I don't know why that's such a big hang up, but they just want to get rid of Baker Mayfield, not have to pay salary. Carolina's like, you have to give us something. But maybe the Browns are kind of waiting to say like, well, if Deshaun Watson's out for a year or more, maybe we want to get Sam Darnold back so that we have at least something there. Because I don't know, it still kind of seems like, to me, I would approach Baker and be like, hey, do you want to play for us again for this year? I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's kind of done. I think we've seen his last snap as a Brown, which is kind of unfortunate because like he was the guy that's kind of brought them back to relevance, but it is what it is, I guess, at this point.
So there's no chance at healing. I mean, obviously you and I talk about healing a lot in our professions here, right? But there's no chance at sitting down and ironing this out and saying, hey, we just wanted to go with a talent like his, not saying he's better than you, whatever. There's no shot at that in your opinion.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think you have a chance at it. But I think also Baker has been so hurt by it.
Yeah.
And also it kind of seems like he's pretty done. But if like your options are play with the Browns and possibly make the playoffs, or play with Carolina and finish maybe second if you're lucky. I don't know. Maybe he might go for it. But the Deshaun Watson thing continues to be, well, just absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a couple more women have come out with lawsuits. Obviously, the New York Times article last week was a big deal. But it also seems like Deshaun Watson still doesn't get it. He continues to say that he's done nothing. I don't know. If 24 women versus one guy, you got to start believing the 24 women at some point, right?
With similar stories, with the stories being, I mean, almost identical in some cases.
Yeah. So, like, at some point, you got to say, okay, yeah, like, this guy is definitely messing up here. And also, I saw this quote, and I think it's a horrible quote to say that this has been really tough on me.
Yeah.
No one really cares that it's been tough on you.
No.
And I think it kind of goes to show you he's a little lost in the applesauce in that regard. And I don't know. I think also kind of like what you said, I think Roger Goodell has to have a big hammer down here. Because if, let's say, he gets less than a year, people will compare, well, in baseball, Trevor Bauer, who was also acquitted of all charges and only was accused of assaulting one woman. Granted, it different, like more physical as opposed to more sexual, but still 1 versus 24, and he's getting 2 years. And also, he was going to be the highest paid baseball player this year, next year. And the Browns, Deshaun Watson only gets 5-6 games. It's going to look like the NFL doesn't care about these testimonies.
Right.
It's going to look like, especially if you look at that New York Times article where they're saying, yeah, 66 different masseuses over the course of 17 months. It's going to just look really bad. I think, first of all, I think Deshaun Watson should say, I'm going to step aside until this is fully settled and a decision's made. It sounds like he's not going to do that. But also, I would be surprised, like, the NFL can't let this guy start. Really, I would even say start a preseason game. Not until everything is settled. Not until, like, we can finally figure out, like, where is this going? Are we doing a year? Are we doing 2 years? Are we doing indefinitely? Another thing, too, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Roger Goodell, not only for the perception of how do I care about women, but also the owners. From what I've read, a lot of the owners hate this Deshaun Watson contract. Having over 200 million guaranteed
yeah,
is such a big deal. And if they can get rid of most of that or some of that, I think that'll kind of relieve a lot of the pressure, because owners hate giving out the guaranteed contracts. They hate having to give out like the extra. And obviously, like, you see that everywhere. If one owner is doing it, like, I think about it, Deshaun Watson hasn't played in 2 years and he got a $230 million contract. Let's say, like, a guy like Baker Mayfield, what is he going to ask for in the open market? What's Lamar Jackson, who's actually won an MVP and a playoff game, what is he going to ask for in the open market? 300 million?
Yeah.
So, like, I can understand that a little bit, but it is going to be interesting to see how that ends up playing out.
Well, I think the owners are greedy, right? Especially in the NFL. And this probably shouldn't be their top priority. You're right. I thought I had read that also. But I will say this: there's a lot of owners and a lot of folks in the NFL that really feel that that's been a big part of the NFL's really rise in popularity, is the fact that the players have to play for their money all the time. And there's very little, or at least it has been. It's been more and more over the years, but there's been very little over the years in general of guaranteed money. So that makes them play a little bit harder. Can I make a comparison with Deshaun Watson? Because I realized something probably a couple of months ago, but it came back up as he was saying he had no regrets. I think that's what somebody asked him did he have any regrets? He's like, no, I have no regrets. And then he did go on to defend himself, which is his right, right? To say that, he never forced himself on anyone. And, and he said stuff like that. His lawyer is Rusty Hardin. Rusty Hardin has represented a lot of people over the years. He's a pretty famous lawyer now, but probably his most famous client up until this point was Roger Clemens. And if Roger Clemens had just admitted what he had done, there's no doubt in my mind he'd probably be in the Hall of Fame now. I think it was the deniability, and I think the same can be said of Rafael Palmeiro as well as Barry Bonds, obviously. And those are three that totally did not. Now Mark McGwire was maybe a fringe Hall of Fame player anyway, even though he hit a ton of home runs, and he did at least admit what he what he had did, and so did Andy Pettitte. And I've always felt Andy Pettitte should have gotten more consideration, but what he was saying, if you look back at some of Roger Clemens, denying and saying, hey, he could care less about the Hall of Fame, he has no regrets in his career, it sounded a lot like what Deshaun Watson said. So I wonder if, and obviously I'm not comparing the two, because you taking steroids and you possibly sexually abusing women, forcing yourself on them, it's it's not even in the same stratosphere, right? But I think that the lawyer probably, has told him, listen, here's what you say. But boy, oh boy, did that not play well, right? I would say probably especially there in Cleveland, when he said, hey, I have no regrets. I would have to say that was probably a strong reaction out there, right?
Yeah. Like, it's kind of seems like at first when the trade came through, it was like, well, it's controversial, but the Browns have a shot at making the Super Bowl. So we could kind of overlook it if everything is, if we could get past the legal stuff, everything's going to be fine. But then as things start to come out and then he starts to open his mouth about it, it's like, oh gosh, we really don't want any part of this guy. I kind of feel like his perception wasn't great anyway. And now it kind of seems like, kind of like with the Knicks, where you're kind of waiting for that other shoe to drop. It's like, wow, like Deshaun Watson was too good to be true. And now it's looking like it's too good to be true. And now our quarterback situation is like horrible. It's just like, it doesn't seem very good at all. Because you had to alienate the one guy that was loyal the whole time, was playing hurt last year. And now and also I still think of the quote where they said they want an adult in the room. And apparently Deshaun Watson is more of an adult than Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield's done some weird stuff, but he's never been accused of sexual assault.
Yeah. Mayfield has a temper and has said some things that have been crazy, but nothing to this level. I think, Ken, let me ask you this, and then we can move on to, because I know you want to talk about your Yankees. My goodness. And we've got to get Mike Clark back on, because the high-flying Atlanta Braves with their 14 in a row, we'll get to that in a second, because now for the first time I'm a little bit nervous, But I think, are you as surprised as I am if you go back 5, 6, 7 years and Deshaun Watson, those couple of years in Clemson when he was the starting quarterback, and then those first few years in Houston, he just seemed like this model athlete and, pillar of the community. It's so hard to believe. And I don't know if it's just me that noticed it, but there's been a hardening of him almost, and maybe that's now because he's got to come out fighting. I don't know what it is. He's just, even physically, to me, now we get older even in just a couple of years, but there's something in his eyes now, that wasn't there before. He just even physically looks different to me. He has more of a hardened, look to himself. He had the hood up, and whereas if you go back, he just seemed like this guy that was soft-spoken and just wanted to was obviously very, very gifted at playing football and wanted to be a leader and, brought Clemson up before Trevor Lawrence. I mean, are you as surprised as I am that here it is, not 5, 6, 7 years later, that he just seems to be a total different person?
Yeah, I'll make a comparison here. That'd be like Russell Wilson kind
Yeah,
of taking that turn. Because like
right. That's a
Deshaun
good one.
Watson, like he was coming out of college in the first couple of years, even his last full year in Houston, where he's thrown for 5,000 passing yards. He was like, man, if I could start an NFL franchise with any quarterback, maybe I would take this guy. Yeah, some people would say Patrick Mahomes or maybe Aaron Rodgers, but like Deshaun Watson was right there. Um, a guy you never would think would kind of cause any ruffles or
No,
just kind
yeah,
of be your excellent model quarterback, so to speak.
yeah,
I agree with you. I don't know what's happened. And I think like sometimes what you see physically can kind of show what's going on, like mentally, emotionally, spiritually too. And I kind of feel like you do kind of see that where he's kind of gone from like this like fun-loving guy, a very charitable guy, a guy that's um an excellent football player to this guy that kind of just seems like a sleazy type of guy. I don't
yeah.
know.
It, it is, and I promise we'll move on. But you said spiritually there, and that crossed my mind this week as well. I have no idea what his faith is and where it's at, so I would never, speculate that. I haven't read anything about that. I will say this though, that a lot of things that are in the Bible about surrounding yourself, with mentors and surrounding yourself with the right people and feeding yourself the right things every day, not food necessarily, right, but feeding yourself the right things every day. I just think that these seem to be things that he probably did on his own, didn't tell anybody, and was as much as a leader he is with the team and everything, he probably peeled off by himself. And even if maybe somebody tried to talk to him and say, hey, yeah, another massage, and he probably just kind of shrugged that off. I'm making some assumptions here, but I just don't. He doesn't seem like the type of guy that maybe surrounded himself with the right people. And certainly it sounded like from a couple of those articles a few weeks ago that the Texans were a little bit enablers, in this, setting this up for him and not questioning anything. So I think when you say spiritually, you're dead on, because that's exactly what I see a lack of, in him right now. And again, I don't want to make any speculation on where his faith is at, or but that could definitely pull him out of this, right? If he turns to the Bible. I mean, for people like you and I, that is usually the only answer, right, to a lot of things. And I don't want to go that far with him, because I think in the practical world, he almost needs to fall on his sword a little bit, and say, listen, I did some things here that I regret doing, and especially since they can't prosecute him, again, maybe they could bring other charges, I don't know, but and so I think that if he lives the rest of his life and his conscience is clear and he's broke, and let's say if he does find the Lord, if he hasn't already, again, I don't know that, he'll live a great life, right? But if he kind of stays in this dark place, and that's the last thing I'll say, he seems like he's in a dark place. That's
Yeah.
the first thing that came to my mind when I saw some of those conferences. Anyway, let's jump to something more. The New York Yankees and the Atlanta Braves. Let's combine both of them, and we'll see if we can get Mike back on, and give a little viewpoint south. We'll talk to baseball, and we'll jump to obviously the NBA Finals. And then I know you said you had a topic you wanted to surprise me on when it came to baseball, so I wanted to remind you of that.
Yeah.
And it's so. I mean, the Braves have won 14 in a row. We'll start with them real quick, and we can come back to them with the Mets. They have just figured everything out, and some of their players who got off to these cold starts. They had a tough injury the other day. Ozzy Albies, I believe, broke his foot, or I believe he broke his foot. So he's going to be out for a while. And he's a huge, huge part of that team, even though he was off to a really slow start himself. some of these guys that got off to a slow start, like Swanson and especially Austin Riley, just caught fire. Their first baseman has caught fire, which we knew it was just a matter of time because he obviously has a great track record. And the pitching we knew was going to be good. So now you have the result 14 in a row. They're 10 games over 500 now. And they're only 4 games in back of the Mets. So we'll come back to them in a second. But under the radar, no, I'm surprised at this. I want to ask you this first, and then I'll just give you some space to just talk about the Yankees and what they're doing. They're taking these first 2 from Tampa Bay, which is a team that usually gives them a lot of problems, man. So this is definitely, and Tampa obviously is a very, very good team. But for the Yankees, are you surprised that they're not the talk of baseball? It seems to me that they're just winning every single night, but it's like even here in New York, it seems to be more talk about the Mets than about the Yankees. Are you surprised at that?
Yeah, a little bit, especially like going into this season, and especially after like the first couple weeks where they're a couple games over 500, they lose 2 out of 3 to Baltimore, and people were like, "Oh my gosh, the sky is falling." And then you look like they didn't get Carlos Correa, they didn't get Trevor Story, they didn't get Corey Seager.
Yeah.
But then like they start going on this run, and it really hasn't stopped. And I think one of the biggest things that to me is surprising is, like no one's really talking about it, but also like it just kind of has become very like they just kind of keep winning. And I think what's really been impressive for me is the different types of ways they've been winning recently.
Yeah.
Like you're getting some excellent starts here and there. Nestor Cortez had a hiccup last week, but is back on track. Same with Garrett Cole. Jameson Taillon also, he hasn't pitched great the last 2 games, but they still won both of them. But it's just been like, whether it's the offense is picking up a day, whether it's the pitching, whether it's the bullpen, it kind of has become like a very team effort. The defense, IKF had a couple of really big plays the last couple of games. I might butcher the way I'm phrasing this, but I saw a stat that to me has been very impressive. The Yankees have the most comeback wins in baseball, as well as the least comeback losses. So when another team has a lead, it's the least safe. And every time the Yankees have the lead, it's the most safe.
Wow.
It just kind of seems like everyone kind of seems a little more hungrier than they have in years past. I don't know if it is guys like Gary Sanchez and Gio Urshela and Luke Voigt, like guys that were really good on the Yankees, that maybe like just having that different culture might be helping. And also like just the random guys that Brian Cashman has kind of picked up. I saw a thing where people are like, Brian Cashman needs more credit, and he kind of does.
Yeah.
Jose Trevino, from what I've read, they were trying to get him and IKF in a trade from Texas before the lockout. And they really liked him, and I see why. He hits that walk-off in the 13th inning on Friday night, which apparently was another special day for him. I forgot what it was, but both of them have been great. Matt Carpenter is the first Yankee to hit 6 home runs in his first 10 games.
I was totally wrong about Matt Carpenter. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
no, you're good.
And he was always one of my, I never, the Cardinals, because it's the rivalry that they have with the Mets, but he was just one of those guys I always liked, because at the end of the year, he always put up good numbers. He just seems to me to be a winning ball player. And I'm sure he still is. But the last few years, I was like, man, I was surprised. I think I might have mentioned to you last day, I was surprised Carpenter's not playing and he's not hurt. The Cardinals, they kind of sat him for a long time. And I was like, he's not that old. I think he's 36, I think. And so I was wrong about him. I mean, I don't think he's hitting for a high average, but he's certainly the clutch and winning ball player.
Yeah, no, he's been incredible.
Yeah.
And also, I think what can really help define the Yankee season now, They also, I saw a stat last night, they won their 46th game. That's 62 games in.
Amazing.
Only 6 other teams have won at least 46 games in their first 62.
That's amazing. Yeah.
To put it in perspective, if they go 500 the rest of the way, which would be sad, but still, if they go 500, they would still win 96 games.
Wow.
If they just went 2 out of 3 the rest of the way, they would win 113 games. So like,
yeah,
it's incredible. But also, you look at this stretch. So I'm just gonna read off these next few games here. So they have 3. They're finishing their 3rd in Tampa, and then they have 3 against Toronto, and then they head to Tampa, 3 against the Rays, and then they play the Astros for 4, the A's for 3, and then they have one of their lockout makeup games against Houston, and then they head to Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Boston. That's like the next few weeks here. So if they can come out of this and still like, and if they win every series in this, you're going to start hearing talks of, is this the best team we've ever seen? Yeah. Can they break the record of 116 wins from Seattle?
Yeah.
So, and it just, like I said, it's like every night it seems like it's something different. Whether it's Higashioka, who's been awful this year, hits a huge 3-run home run yesterday. Aaron Judge hit his 25th yesterday. So yeah, I still, my biggest thing is you still got to win it in October, but I'm very excited because like in years past, it was like, this team is good enough to make it to the playoffs, but like, I don't know how the hitting's going to be. I don't know who's pitching the second game after our ace. Really, like a lot of those concerns seem to be very different now.
You just hit it, because and thanks for painting a good picture of this incredible team that they put together here. And yeah, these next 2-3 weeks is I thought I saw that this is going to be a really big test for them these next couple. But I think if it stays the same, and you get to late August and September, and they've got a good sized lead, and they're playing the way they are playing, the talk is going to shift to, can they do this in the postseason? We don't know yet. We obviously are not going to know until we get there. It's because since 2009, every year that they've gotten into the postseason, there were a couple of years they missed it, but every year they've gotten in, it's been a disappointing finish. 2017 was obviously probably the most disappointing when they couldn't close out the Astros there. But I think that this team is built to win. Is it built to win in the postseason? I think as long as we see this pitching continue the way it is, because people are going to have their slumps in the postseason, and not, you and I have talked about this a lot, where we just love the players that always come through, clutch in the postseason, and this to me is why Mariano Rivera is here and everybody else is right here. Even the best closers we've seen at Meltdown, as much as Mariano pitched, so we only point to maybe 1 or 2 times where where he blew a big save in the postseason. But I think that if this pitching holds up and we see the same thing, and they're so deep in the bullpen, so if Boone veers off and starts to do like Kevin Cash and some of these guys in the postseason, 3rd inning, I'm taking out the starter, which I don't think he will with his staff, but he's got a lot of arms to call on, provided they're healthy and everything. And so when you look at how the postseasons have gone these last several years now, where you don't see these starting pitchers go deep in the postseason, they should. I totally disagree with it. I think the Yankees are built a lot better this year for the postseason than they have been in a little while. But we don't know. That the talk is going to quickly shift to that, I think, as you get out to August and September. Nobody's saying anything now. I'm surprised they're flying under the radar. And I'll say this: it could be a little Yankee hatred out there still. It's like, darn New York Yankees. Although again, it's been a while since they've been back in the World Series, but it's not like they've been this dominant team like they were in the 90s, or you go back to the 40s, the 50s, and even the 60s, early 60s, where they were winning every year. And so there was this hatred, for them, and maybe some of that is still out there, But I'm surprised that more people are talking about the way they're winning as well, because also they're not steamrolling every night. They're pulling these games out in the seventh, eighth, ninth inning, all these walk-ups, and they're walking off in different ways, sacrifice fly. I mean, it's just it's fun to see. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, and also you look at so Toronto has been a great team this year, 37-25.
Yeah.
They would be leading the AL Central. They're 9 games back.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay is 35-27. They wouldn't be leading the AL Central, but they would be right up there. They're 11 games back. Both of them had hot streaks, and it was completely they were so good, but then they basically didn't gain any ground.
Yeah, they're probably already saying, okay, wild card, here we come. It's still really early, and there's been a couple of teams that have had June swoons, the Angels being one of them, right? But the Yankees and the Mets are both, no June swoons here, and it's been fun to watch. The Mets have help coming. We'll shift to them for just a quick second. Scherzer is on his way back, and hopefully DeGrom will keep up. It'll be about a year that last we saw Jacob DeGrom, which is hard to believe that between these couple of injuries that he's had, it'll be about a year since we've seen him. I mean, Buck Showalter continues to just be the difference. He just knows how to press the right button. With his team, they got spanked last night by the Brewers, but and it's funny, the Mets have just been really consistent. They had a tough road trip, but they, came back at 500 off the road trip, which was great. They're taking series. They don't go on a losing streak, and they also don't go on a long winning streak either. So they've been really, really consistent. It's been great to watch, but now, they got to be looking over their shoulders a little bit. Again, it's early. I told Mike yesterday, I think, that it's going to be a fun summer. I mean, who wouldn't want a pennant race going back and forth in the summer? And one of the interesting things is that the schedule is weird this year. I think you pointed that out a few weeks back, because I think the Mets have already played the Phillies 13 times, yet they've, I think, only played the Braves 3 times so far. So most of their games with the Braves are coming up, over the summer and in August and September. So it's gonna be fun. I mean, I love a great pennant race. It's hard when your team is in a pennant race, because you live and die every day. But I think these teams are gonna battle it out. The Phillies have got themselves back into it a little bit with them playing much, much better. Although I still, until they shore up their bullpen and defense, I can't take them that seriously. But the Mets and Braves, this is gonna be a lot of fun, I think, over the summer. I mean, the Braves have the heart of a champion. They aside from losing Freddie Freeman, they brought back a lot of their players from last year. Soler, they didn't. But this doesn't surprise. It surprises me that they peeled off 14 in a row, but it doesn't surprise me that they've gotten back into the race here. So I think the National League East is going to be fun. You and I predicted that at the beginning, that we thought it would be a 3-team race, in the National League East. But I think it's going to be a 2-team race. The Phillies may hang in because of their offense. They've just got, man, oh man, they've got quite the offense. If the offense stays healthy, but this defense is terrible, which is hard. But yeah, and so let's shift over to the NBA Finals.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Something that's kind of become a trend this year has been position players pitching. I don't know if you know this, but the Detroit Tigers yesterday, they lost 13-0. They used 3 position players, including Roger Clemens' son. So I have a few numbers here. 2022, right now, this is a couple of weeks old, so I know it's higher than this. 23 and counting have had position players pitching on pace for 79. I'm sure that that's higher now. Last year was 95. 2019 was 90. 2018, 65. 2017, 36. As recent as 2011, there was only 8 position players that actually like pitched in a game. As you know, because it happened to the Mets, position players can't pitch in a game unless it's at least a 6-run lead or an extra innings. So I want to hear your thoughts on it. And what do you think? Do you think the MLB should do anything about it?
My short answer is I hate it. I think it makes a mockery of the game. I don't. I mean, so you're saving one reliever, one inning. I mean, does it really make a big difference? And in the Tigers' case, you're saving, 1 or 2 relievers, maybe. I really hate. Every bullpen has their guys that they're not going to put in unless they're down by 5 or 6 runs anyway. I hate to say that. It's just, I know the Mets have 1 or 2 guys like that, right? But it makes a mockery of the game. It doesn't feel right, to me when we see Albert Pujols coming in or Yachty coming in. And here's the thing with baseball, you never stop playing. You never know. We've seen incredible comebacks over the years. It was a Sunday night game, Mariners and Indians several years ago, and I think the Mariners were winning like 11-1, and the Indians chipped away and came back and like won that game something like 12-11 or 13-12 or something like that. I mean, you just never know. When a team can come back. It's just I don't like it. I don't know that MLB will do anything. I think they're struggling with the shift stuff, which will probably happen next year. But I don't. I mean, I didn't realize the rule that they couldn't come in 5 or 6. You had to be, was it 6 runs?
Yeah.
You have to be up by at least 6 runs. I could tell you there's been definitely this year, right, where teams have come back from 6 runs. The Mets came back from 5, in the 9th inning, So I'm sure there's been a team that's come back from 6 runs. Why would you put a position player in? I don't get it. And a lot of these teams are carrying a lot of pitchers, right? I think the Mets have 14 pitchers right now,
Yeah.
And so I hate it. I think MLB should do something about it. I don't think they will.
Yeah. For me, I would say, first of all, yeah, it's because, like, I'll give another stat here. Kyle Higashioka hit a home run off of a position player on Sunday, a 35-mile-an-hour pitch. Like, that's like a softball pitch. They say it's the slowest recorded pitch in like the StatCast era.
I mean,
for
come
a home
on.
run.
Nobody wants to see it.
So yeah, and I agree. Like, no one really wants to see it. There's also the risk of position players getting hurt because like they're not used to pitching. People are like, oh, maybe you should do a mercy rule. I kind of don't agree with that either.
No.
I think what they should do is they should just expand the rosters. Notice you saw more in May and June than you did in April because they had a couple extra roster spots.
Yeah.
So I think make the rosters 30, add a couple of guys that like, yeah, they're guys that come in when it's 12-1. Starters that you hope can kind of get some experience. And at that point, like, also, I think there should also be a kind of a, like they talk about the unwritten rules where you don't swing 3-0. Like, that should go out the window when the other team has decided, well, I don't care about this game. I'm throwing a position player out there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And some of those unwritten rules, you and I talked about that, are ridiculous. Baseball is a game where you just keep playing. You're hustling. You're coming up to bat. It's 10-0. You're still gonna try to have the same at bat as if it was 1-0.
Yeah.
And that's how the game should be. You just never know. The clock's not gonna run out. That's what makes baseball different, right? If you're down, 28 points in the fourth quarter and there's 7 minutes left in football, the clock's going to run out more than likely, right? It has to be a miracle. At NBA, we've seen some great comebacks, The Knicks lost some big leads this year, in like, that Laker game, I remember they were up by like 25, 27, going close to halftime. And, but the difference in those sports is that the clock can run out on you. And baseball, the clock doesn't run out, man. We've seen comebacks with 2 outs in the 9th inning, and teams down by 3 or 4 runs, and they've come back and walked off. So to put a position player in and to wave the white flag in baseball of all sports, again, basketball, would you blame any team for they're down by 30 points with 5 minutes left to, okay, we're taking out all of our starters and putting in all of our bench guys? You wouldn't blame that, right? Because the time is against you. But baseball, the time's not against you. And mercy rule in the major leagues, that's just silly. But speaking of time, I'll ask you this real quick, because I read this and then we'll jump to the finals. That was a great question, by the way. But I saw where the pitch clock, where they're testing that out in the minors, has shaved off 27 minutes, average of 27 minutes for each game. So that's amazing. I could see that coming really soon, maybe as soon as next year in the major leagues, because some of these games, man, are 3.5 hours long. They used to never be this long, And we thought having the pitcher pitch at least to 3 people would, some of these things would help, but there's still some of these guys that are human rain delays, that get out, walk out of the box, fixing their stuff, Joe McEwing and Bernie Williams, they were both terrible at that,
Yeah.
But there's still some guys that do that a lot. What do you think about the pitch clock? Did that surprise you?
No, I went to the AA Akron Rubber Ducks game. They had the pitch clock there, and honestly, I didn't really even notice it. It kind of does make the game move a little faster, and especially like the biggest thing is over the next few years, there might be a couple of guys, like I think of like Zach Greinke. Juan Soto also is really bad at staying in the box.
Yeah.
But like once a lot of the guys that don't work with the pitch clock are gone, like 10 years from now, you're not even going to really notice it because guys are going to be so used to it in the minors.
Yeah, I think so. I'm anxious to see how that works. Okay, before we get to the NBA Finals, quick shout out New York Rangers, man. What a great year. You hope they could build on that. The Islanders didn't. They got to the conference finals last year and they took a step back. And the NHL fires coaches like crazy, by the way. I saw where the Las Vegas coach got fired. I mean, weren't they in the finals like 2 years ago?
They were the last champion that wasn't Tampa Bay, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was only a few years. That coach unfortunately got let go too. But the Rangers, what a great year. Tampa is just, I couldn't tell you the particulars on why they're so good, but they're just really, really good. And I know Colorado won last night, so those finals are well underway. ABC has both, huh? They've got NBA and NHL. Now I know why the NHL started a little later, so that they can have a little bit more of a spotlight here, because the NBA finals will be over by the time they get to like game 3, in the NHL finals. And we'll see. I think some people will be interested to see a team, maybe go for 3 in a row here. But the Rangers did great. I know that, they had a 2-0 lead and they lost that, but still that, Tampa woke up and figured them out, somehow. And, so shout out to the Rangers. Hopefully they build on that and maybe get to the finals next year. So speaking of finals, what's your take here? Warriors now up 3-2. Are you surprised? I know I am. I thought the Celtics would be up 3-2, but I think the first thing I said to you was Steph Curry has the heart of a champion. I mean, this guy is he's just unbelievable. And I think he's almost willing this team, and that plus the fact that for some reason, all of the Celtics top players, Jason Tatum really leading the way, have gone ice cold. They just keep launching threes, man. And it's just, but what's your take here on what's been, I think, a good finals? There hasn't been a great, grinded out last minute, game here. Everyone seems that, some team takes control in the fourth quarter, and then it's like, all right, there's no way the Celtics are winning this, and no way the Warriors are winning this. But what's been your take here on the final?
I'll give you credit because this has now happened the last 2 years where you've kind of called the series flipping.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it all starts with Steph Curry, where I think he really set the tone in game 4 in the 43-point game.
Yeah.
I think though the biggest takeaway is I look at game 5 where he was awful and they still won by double digits.
Yeah.
And I think it shows a lot of one of the things when I first predicted the Warriors to win and then kind of bailed on it was like they have so many different guys that can throw out a 25, 30-point night that you don't need Steph Curry to drop 35 a game. And really like last night was game 5 was the last time that the only first time we really saw that. Like you look at Andrew Wiggins, who like was one of those guys where you're like, well, he's been a big bust. He's just gonna be known as the guy that LeBron traded away for Kevin Love. And yet he's had a finals moment in here. Jordan Poole has had a great moment. Klay Thompson. So I'm really interested to see if they could close it out here in game 6. My original pick was Warriors in 7, but I can't be all like bragging about that because I thought the Celtics would win. Really, after game 3, it looked like this team was too rattled to come back from it. The defense seemed really good, but then like it seems like the Celtics have kind of been a little bit in over their heads, which is kind of weird to say because like they've stepped up every single time in the postseason.
Yeah.
But really, like game 5, especially when you're tied 2-2, is critical. 82% of teams that win game 5 tied 2-2 win the series.
Yeah.
And it just kind of seemed like they really didn't step up fully. Now, that's not to say they're not going to come out with energy. It wouldn't surprise me if Jason Tatum drops a 32 or 48 or whatever. But it's just to me, this has been surprising on how the tone has changed. But once again, like you kind of look at it, even if Boston wins the next 2 games, there's still that talk that Steph Curry might win Finals MVP, which I don't think would happen. And I wouldn't support that because like you can't be Finals MVP and still lose. I know that's happened once with Jerry West in '69.
Yeah.
But like it's interesting because that narrative's already out there. So I feel like there'd be people that would kind of go there. But yeah, it's been a good but not great series. I agree with
that. Yeah, I agree with everything you said. And it's so interesting that Curry's performance, which is probably the reason for this talk, in game 4 really has changed the tone of the series. It really has. And I think that you're right. If in order for the Celtics to win this game 6, it's on their home court, which is good. And remember, for years the finals was 2-3-2. So I kind of like now that several years ago now they went back to this 2-2, 1-1-1. In terms of home court and everything. So at least the Celtics now have another shot here with a game back on their home court. But they need a huge game from Jason Tatum. They really do. He's the key, I think, now to this series because I think Golden State, you're going to get what you get, from them. They're not intimidated by the Boston crowd. They've just been there. The core of that team has been there way too many times before. And talking about the 3 that's been in and out. And Iguodala played the other night, so throw him in there, and the crowd in Boston is not going to intimidate them at all. So they've just got to get a big performance from Tatum. It'll be interesting. Yeah, I don't remember, and it's a great topic, right? I didn't realize that. So Jerry West, and that had to be against the Celtics, right? 69, he won the Finals MVP. Wow. Okay, and on a losing team.
Yeah, let's see if I can pull up those numbers real quick.
Jerry West, for those, I mean, I saw him towards the end of his career. Even at the end of his career, he was a great player. I mean, he was almost like the perfect player because he could pass, he could shoot, he could dribble, he played great defense. Jerry West was just amazing. He's had an amazing, amazing career when you add his executive stuff in there as well.
Yeah. All right. He averaged 39 points or 37 points, wow. 7 assists, and 5 rebounds throughout the finals.
Wow. Yeah.
He had a game where he scored 53, 10 assists, 3 rebounds. He also had a game where he scored 41, 40, and 42. His lowest point total was 24. So
those Laker teams couldn't get past the Celtics in the 60s, you know, and that's the year that Bill Russell was player coach, you know, for them, if I'm not mistaken. And then the next year they played the Knicks in the final, and that was the Knicks' first championship. But that was an amazing era, you know, for basketball, because it wasn't nearly as many teams, but it was great players. And for West to win the Finals MVP, wow! And they lost. But I think they only beat the Celtics once in that era, if I'm not mistaken. And when I say that era, the '60s, because the Celtics just they had the Lakers number. Even when the Lakers went out and got Wilt Chamberlain, you know, they said, hey, we've got to get somebody that's going to go up against Bill Russell. But Chamberlain couldn't beat Russell when he was on the 76ers, you know, and. You know, so that was a great era. That's an amazing stat. I'm trying to think, I'm sure there has been in history. Has there been a World Series MVP from a losing team?
I want to say maybe 1960. Yeah, okay. I was right there. 1960, Bobby Richardson of the Yankees. He's the only one.
Yankees lose too?
That was the Pittsburgh one.
Oh, okay. The Game 7 walk-off.
Yeah. He batted 367, 12 RBIs in the series.
Wow.
He also hit a grand slam.
Wow, that's a great series. Who's the second baseman of the Pirates that hit that home run to win? It's a little controversial because people say he didn't deserve to go to the Hall of Fame, but he's in the Hall of Fame. So I think he was a great fielder. I remember seeing him play towards the end of his career. The name is just escaping me.
Bill Mazeroski.
Bill Mazeroski, right. Bill Mazeroski was a really good player. He's a shortstop, I think, or second baseman. I thought he was a good player. You know, people say he should have went to the Hall of Fame, but he got in. I think he got in like on his last year of eligibility, if I'm not mistaken. But people were like, wait a second, you know, I think he's like his career, he probably batted like 260 or something like that. But
yeah, 260 exactly.
He batted 260 exactly. I mean,
he was voted by the Veterans Committee.
By the Veterans Committee, okay. So like Harold Baines is in, you know, that you'll see that from the Veterans Committee, I think, over these next few years, you know. Some of these guys that weren't, Jim Cott, you know, got in. Anyway, so next week, and we'll get ready to wrap up here. It's Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to you.
You as well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and your mom, I think, gave us an idea for a great topic for next week, because I want to dig into this a little bit. And she saw a video out there of Steph Curry, speaking of Steph Curry, his 3-year-old son dribbling two regular-sized basketballs at 3 years old, and at the same time kind of through his legs and everything like that. And so it got me to thinking, is that inherited, right? Is that talent inherited? And we've seen over the years so many, and there's famous videos with Tiger Woods, you know, and doing some crazy things with the golf club and golf ball when he's like 3-4 years old, back on shows that no longer exist, the Mike Douglas show and stuff like that. And so I think it's an interesting topic. We can look at some of the athletes, and you start to think about, as you come up, you know, there's a lot of commercials with Serena Williams and her daughter, and just start, and they're playing tennis together, and there's a moment where she's hitting the tennis ball, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, she inherits Serena's, you know, talent. So I think that'll be an interesting conversation, because I think there also have been some sons of players that have not quite made it, and we can talk about that as well, sons or daughters. So we'll say that for a topic for next week. You're looking up something though. I can tell. What are you looking up?
I was just listing a few of the father son combinations here.
Oh, okay. Okay. Go ahead.
Like a few that have come to mind. Like Barry and Shane Larkin, different sports, but
Right. Right. Okay. That'll be
the
good too.
Mannings.
The Mannings. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And one that'll be interesting is LeBron and his son. That'll be an interesting one to kind of watch.
See how that plays out. Yeah, how that plays out over the next few years. You know, obviously Bronny is talented. You know, seeing him dunk and stuff like that, he's certainly talented. So that'll be those are big, and maybe we could get into that too because those are big shoes to fill. You know, as well. I mean, you know, if your dad was LeBron James, you know, anybody can make an argument that he's the greatest player ever. Now you're, you know, when those expectations are so high. So I think that'll be a good conversation to talk about as well. You know, and you know, how do you fill those expectations? And there's been some in different sports. I love that. You know, like you know, Shane Larkin didn't really pan out in the NBA, but he was a very good college player, decent NBA player. You know, but Barry Larkin's Hall of Fame, if I'm not mistaken. I forgot. I'm sure there's a few combinations like that. You know. And I forget the Mannings. I'm wondering, Eli or Peyton's kids, you know, are they quarterbacks as well? I don't know. I think we can look that up. Yeah.
I think they have a nephew that's like one of the top high school guys. Like
really?
their other brother that like he had gotten hurt, I think in high school. Cooper Manning.
Right.
I believe his son is really good.
Yeah. All right. I think it'll be interesting for next week. So have a terrific Father's Day, and we'll dive into that topic next week. I think that'll be a lot of fun. So let me throw the music on, and you take us home there, son.
All righty. Well, this is Kenny Squared End.
Kenny.
With Sports on the Positive Tip. We will see you guys next week, and happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.